Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Prakriti and today we are going to move further with another topic of Indian Contract Act 1872, that is free consent, a very important essential for forming an agreement to contract. Before moving further with free consent, the concept of consent must be clear. The consent is defined under section 13 of Indian Contract Act. Here, two or more persons are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense. It is defined under the maxim which is consensus adium, which means meeting of minds. Here the consent is clear when two or more persons are agree on the same thing in the same sense. In the section 14, it defines free consent, where consent is said to be free when it is not caused by. Here it is a negative definition that free consent is a consent where it is free from these five elements, that are coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. Consent is said to be caused when it would not have been given but for the existence of such coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake. Free consent must be free from coercion and all these five elements. Every object or any consideration should be free. In the case of error or in causa, which means no consent at all. Error in consensus, where means no free consent. Where no free consent lies, which means the contract is not valid. Let's see what is coercion. Coercion is defined under section 15. Coercion is the committing or threatening to commit an act forbidden by the Indian Penal Code 45 to 1860, or the unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property. The well-known case for this coercion is Anwar Shetty case. The next is undue influence, which is defined under section 16, where a contract is said to be induced by undue influence where relations subsisting between the parties are such that one of the parties in the position to dominate the will of the other and uses that position to obtain an unfair advantage over the another. In the case of Munnu Singh versus Unadat Pandey, it was enumerated. In particular and without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing principle, a person is deemed to be in position to dominate the will of another. The undue influence is said where a contract is made by the two parties where one person is in position to dominate other and the person is taking disadvantage of being in a position superior or in dominating position. Here the position of dominating is defined as where he holds a real or apparent authority over the other or where he stands in a fiduciary relation to the other, where he makes a contract with a person whose mental capacity is temporarily or permanently affected by rage of age, illness, or mental or bodily distress. The third is where a person who is in position to dominate the will of another enters into a contract with him and the transaction appears on the face of it or in the advance adduced to the unconsiderable. The burden of proving that such contract was not induced by undue influence shall lie upon the person in a position to dominate the will of another. That means the person who is holding the dominate position should prove that the contract which is made between them is made with free consent of the other. He has not been it undue influence of that person. Let's see it with an example. Just suppose A is boss of B and A makes a contract with B to marry his son with B's daughter. So here this marriage contract should be of free consent because A is at a dominating position and B is in the position of undue influence. In the section 17, fraud is defined, which means and includes any of the following acts committed by a party to a contract or with his convenience or by his agent with intent to deceive another party thereto or his agent or to induce him to enter into the contract. The suggestion as a fact of that which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. The active concealment of a fact by having knowledge or belief of the fact. A promise made without any intention of performing it. Any other act fitted to deceive. Any such act or omission as the law specially declares to be fraudulent. All these 5 elements are elements to fraud. If any of these elements is present in the consent, that is not to be considered as free consent. It is to be considered as the consent getting by fraud. And very important essential for fraud is the intention of that person to deceive other. The other important essential for free consent is misrepresentation, which is defined under section 18. The positive assertion in a manner not warranted